What's up, my comic comrades? With The Mandalorian Season 3 about to drop on Disney+, we're crazy excited to see how they expand the mythos of Mandalore and its Mandalorians. And one of the focal characters of the upcoming season and story is set to be Bo-Katan Kryze, the former ruler of Mandalore and loyal member of the Death Watch. The live-action version of the character was introduced to us in Season 2 of The Mandalorian, and it left off with the growing problem between her and Din, who now possesses the Darksaber she wants for herself. Because as we know, whoever wields the Darksaber is considered the rightful ruler of Mandalore, so things are going to get quite interesting. That being the case, we're going to dive into the known history of Bo-Katan and tell you a little more about who the character is before things ramp up in the show. Want to hear it? Here we go. The character was created by Dave Filoni and first appeared in Season 4 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars in the episode A Friend in Need. She was voiced by Katie Sackhoff in both her Clone Wars and Rebels animated appearances, and the crazy thing is Katie Sackhoff even plays her in live action in The Mandalorian, which is awesome. Essentially, Sackhoff is the only person to portray the character. In her first appearance, she's a lieutenant for the Death Watch. The Death Watch is considered to be a terrorist group of the Mandalorians, as they want to overthrow the government of Mandalore. The head of Death Watch is Pre Vizsla. Fun fact, he's voiced by Jon Favreau. Anyway, as for Bo-Katan, she's also the leader of a subdivision of the Death Watch, the elite unit called the Night Owls. We end up seeing Bo-Katan because Lux Bonteri, a senator, wants to hire them to kill Count Dooku, as he is responsible for the death of his mother. Ahsoka Tano and R2-D2 unknowingly accompany Lex to his meeting with Death Watch, and when Ahsoka finds out he's meeting with them, needless to say, she is not too happy. You see, she doesn't want to let the Death Watch know she's a Jedi, so she has R2-D2 hold her lightsabers and pretends to be Lux's fiance. Because of this, Bo-Katan puts Ahsoka to work at a local village with the other women that the Death Watch have enslaved. Of course, they eventually find out that Ahsoka is a Jedi, at which point Death Watch almost kills her, but she is saved by R2, who gives her lightsabers to escape. At which point Bo-Katan tries to catch and kill Ahsoka, but isn't able to. It's actually a pretty boss fight, as Bo-Katan and several other Death Watch members chase Ahsoka, R2, and Lux. I highly recommend you watch the episode Friend in Need. The next time we see Bo-Katan is in Season 5, the episodes Eminence, Shades of Reason, and Lawless. In this 3-episode story arc, we see the Death Watch team up with Darth Maul and his brother Savage Opress. But Darth Maul, being Darth Maul, is obviously out for his own self-interest and looking to be the leader of their alliance. So he goes out to recruit several other crime syndicates in an alliance that was called the Shadow Collective. Now, the reason Death Watch teamed up with Darth Maul was to overthrow the Mandalorian government by staging a coup against Duchess Satine Kryze, aka the sister of Bo-Katan. That's right, Bo-Katan's sister is the pacifist ruler of Mandalore. Needless to say, it makes for a very interesting dynamic that one sister is the ruler of Mandalore as a pacifist, while the other one is a lieutenant in the terrorist organization that wants to overthrow Mandalore and take the government back to the old ways. Eventually, Death Watch, with the help of Darth Maul and the other crime syndicates, were able to overthrow Mandalore. Once they do, the leader of Death Watch, Pre Vizsla, betrays Maul, basically being like, yeah, thank you for all your help, but you're no longer needed. Which, let's be honest, Maul was wanting to do the same thing. At this point, Maul challenges Vizsla to a duel for the right to rule Mandalore and wield the Darksaber. It's a pretty boss fight, one that Darth Maul wins by killing Vizsla with his own Darksaber. Maul literally uses the Force to grab the Darksaber, then slices Vizsla's head off, all while Bo-Katan watches in horror. While Darth Maul says, I claim this sword in my rightful place as leader of Death Watch. About half of Death Watch kneels before Darth Maul, since he killed Vizsla, and now wields the Darksaber. But Bo-Katan says, never, no outsider will ever rule Mandalore. Maul says to her, and the rest that don't want to join him, if you won't join me, you will all die. The portion of Death Watch that decides to follow Maul turns on Bo-Katan and the other Death Watch members, as she says to them, you're all traitors. With Maul saying, unfortunately for you, history will not see it that way, as he orders Death Watch to kill her and the rest that won't join. But Bo-Katan and her other allies are able to fend off the rest of the Death Watch and escape. Bo and the Death Watch members that are loyal to her end up saving her sister Satine. But wouldn't you know it, she is recaptured just a little bit after, and at this point Obi-Wan Kenobi arrives on Mandalore to save the Duchess. Because the two have a thing for one another, even though the Jedi are not supposed to love or have intimate feelings for others. But Darth Maul, like the ruthless villain he is, murders Satine with the Darksaber right in front of Obi-Wan. In one of the most tragic scenes in all of Star Wars, breaking Kenobi's heart, because he loved her even though he knew he could never really truly be with her. Obi-Wan is then taken prisoner, but Bo-Katan and her loyal Death Watch members free him to hopefully remove Darth Maul from being the ruler of Mandalore. Now, they weren't successful, which leads to the 7th and final season of the Clone Wars, where Bo-Katan and her Night Owls are continuing their fight against Darth Maul to get Mandalore back. Ultimately, Bo-Katan would run into Ahsoka, where they agree to put their differences aside and work together. Ahsoka, who's no longer part of the Jedi Order, contacts Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker, asking the Republic to help them reclaim Mandalore as it's being ruled by Darth Maul, who obviously Obi-Wan and the Jedi Order want want captured and taken down, so it's in their best interest to help. Long story short, with the help of Ahsoka and the 501st Legion under the command of Commander Rex, they stage an invasion that becomes known as the Siege of Mandalore, with them ultimately succeeding capturing and overthrowing Darth Maul, with Bo-Katan declared regent. The next time we would see Bo-Katan is in Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels, where essentially the Rebels help free Mandalore from the Empire's control. Star Wars Rebels takes place 15 years after the Clone Wars, meaning the galaxy is controlled by the Empire at this point. It's also here we see Bo-Katan accepting the Darksaber from Sabine Wren, who recovered it from Darth Maul, officially becoming the ruler of Mandalore once again, as all the Mandalorians that are alive pledge their loyalty to Katan. Then after this is where we see her for the first time in live action, as Katie Sackhoff reprises her role to play Katan in The Mandalorian, making her first live action appearance in the second season in the episode titled Chapter 11, The Heiress. In her live action debut, which was awesome by the way, we see her and fellow Mandalorians, Koska Reeves and Axe Wolves, rescue Mando and the child. After saving Mando and Grogu, they remove their helmets, which takes Mando or Din off guard because he was always told to never remove his helmet in front of anyone. Bo explains that Din is a child of the Watch, and the Watch is a cult of zealots that follow the very strict and ancient rule called the Way, hence the now very famous and popular line, "This is the way."
This is the way. This is the way.
But clearly Bo and friends don't follow that way, which causes Din to not trust them and be like, yeah, I don't need your help. But as fate would have it, they end up saving him once again, at which point he agrees to help them steal weapons from an Imperial ship. Bo-Katan says, I'll tell you where you can find a Jedi, as Din needs to bring Grogu to a Jedi to be trained. Once the mission is completed, we find out that Bo-Katan wants to find Moff Gideon because he has the Darksaber, and she wants it. But she also tells Mando where he could find the Jedi known as Ahsoka Tano. Long story short, in the finale, Chapter 16, The Rescue, Mando and Boba Fett go to meet Bo-Katan and Koska Reeves at a cantina, where Boba Fett and Reeves get into a confrontation as they say he's a disgrace to the Mandalorian armor, because he's a clone. Nonetheless, they agree to help Mando and Boba Fett retrieve Grogu, who's been captured by Moff Gideon. She agrees because she wants Gideon's Darksaber. They eventually get Grogu back as Mando beats Gideon in combat, taking his Darksaber. Knowing that Bo-Katan wants the Darksaber, Mando offers it to her, but a captured Gideon explains she can't take it. It must be won in combat. With her annoyed, she doesn't take the Darksaber, knowing in order to get the Darksaber, she will have to defeat Mando in combat, which leads us directly into Season 3 of The Mandalorian and why she's going to be such a big focus for this season, as she needs the Darksaber to rule Mandalore once again. Because as of now, Mando is the ruler of Mandalore, as he's the one with the Darksaber. So Bo-Katan is probably going to do whatever it takes to win it from Mando. Anyway, that closes out our brief rundown of Bo-Katan from her first appearance all the way to her most recent in Mandalorian Season 2. It's going to be stupid fun to see how things unfold in Season 3 and how she's going to go about claiming the Darksaber. And if the trailers are any indication, we're also going to see and be introduced to a whole different group of Mandalorians. In the meantime, let us know if you'd like us to give any other Star Wars characters an overview episode like this one. And that's going to bring today's episode to a close, but if you like this one, be sure to check out this episode right here. And if you like all of our episodes, like, subscribe, and comment. It helps us out. But other than that, I'll see you next time when I talk about all things comics.